Hi, Pastor Jeff Leese here from Yosemite Church, just thanking you for watching this video about a rule of life. If you're new to my videos, I often will record those in my tree house. So this is a small little house that I built, and this is a tree in the house, right? Beautiful oak tree. What we want to do in building a rule of life is establish some boundaries, establish some practices, recreate for ourselves some things that we want to do that will move us in a direction of greater intimacy with Jesus. A rule of life has been around since the 1500s. Saint Benedict was one of the first to describe a rule of life. But many of the monastic communities will create a rule of life, a collection of practices that enable and empower them and any one of us to put ourselves in an environment where Jesus is present and we get to absorb him, know him, interact with him, and therefore be refined in our relationship with him. A rule of life is a pattern of behavior and actions that help maintain my walk with God and my growth in spiritual maturity. It comes from the comes from the Latin regula, which means a rhythm or a pattern. The literal definition is a long stick. And so it's kind of where we get our yardstick idea. And so you think about the rhythm of inches that you can use to kind of measure how you're doing. A rule of life can do that. It can give you some practices and a rhythm of behavior that all of a sudden now you can start kind of sensing that you have forward movement, you're making progress. Maybe just inch at a time, but those inches add up. C.S. Lewis said, "Good and evil increase at compound interest. That is why the little decisions that you and I make every day are of such infinite importance. The smallest good act today is the capture of a strategic point from which we may go on to victories we never dreamed of." I love that, and that notion of good or evil increasing at compound interest in the smallest good act today is a capture of a strategic point. A rule of life does that. Whenever we have a rhythm of prayer as one of our rules of life, maybe prayer 3 times a day, maybe prayer at the end of the day where we do an examination of the day. Those little practices capture my relationship with God and bolster my connection to intimacy with Christ. We have described a rule of life, kind of a matrix for it, and kind of think about drawing a circle. And in that circle, in the matrix, there's a vertical component with love God at the top, love others on the bottom. That's the purpose of a rule of life, is to equip me in my relationship with Jesus, becoming more like him, to love God and love others better, to see that growing out of my heart's devotion to him. It really is what following Jesus is all about. Love God, love others. Not just the others I like, but even others I don't like or others that are nothing like me. So that's my purpose for this rule of life as I build habits of prayer, habits of Bible engagement, habits of fellowship, habits of service. As I build those new practices, those patterns of behavior, I love God, love others more. Then there's a horizontal part of the rule of life matrix, and that is partially learning to resist the things that interfere or distract my devotion to God. Learn to resist the things that distract or interfere with my love and devotion to God and my ability to love and be devoted to others. And to embrace the kind of practices that empower me to love God and love others. And so Scripture is absolutely redundant in this notion that there's things we have to resist. Put off the old nature, Scripture tells us. Put to death whatever belongs to your flesh, Scripture says. Get rid of anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language from your lips, Colossians chapter 3. That's resistance. Engagement or embracing is when Paul would say, clothe yourselves, put on compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness. So the fruit of the Spirit is what I'm learning to embrace in my relationship with God as I stay in step with Him. So that rule of life, we will build these habits. So I want to encourage you, check out the specific videos and find out more about how you can build your own personalized rule of life. We have a host of videos that will introduce you to lots of different spiritual practices, spiritual habits, patterns of spiritual behavior that can empower you to stay in step with God, to walk in the Spirit. Please let us know how your rule of life is coming and if we can serve you in any way as you continue to build and refine your rule of life.